Welcome to the Emerging Civil War podcast. I'm Chris Mackowski, and joining me today from the beautiful Shenandoah Valley of Virginia is my friend Aaron Siever. Aaron, how are you today?
Doing well. Doing well. It's a nice day.
It's beautiful. And of course, any chance to sit down and talk about the Civil War with a fellow Civil War traveler makes it an even more beautiful day. So thank you very much. So let's start just by kind of filling folks in on Aaron's Civil War travels because you have the chance to do a lot of exploring and you share a lot of your explorations. We're going to focus in on one of those explorations tonight, but let's talk more broadly about you as Civil War traveler.
Yeah, so I've been passionate about the Civil War since I was little. Um, some people may, I think when I did the podcast, or not the ECW live, I even talked about the report card that I have that has a thing on there that says it was from the fifth grade, said if I had been as passionate about math and science as I was specifically Civil War history, I'd be an all-star student. And my son didn't believe me until I actually found that report card, and he was like, "Oh wow, that's not good." but I used to play Gettysburg in my backyard, both sides, so I was Union and Confederate. I won the battle every time.
Yeah, good for you. That's
Yeah, I never lost. But it just doing that, I've just always been into it. So when I started, learned how to drive, I started going places. The actual first battlefield I ever went to was Gettysburg, even though I live here in the valley. Um, it was a big family trip we actually took, and of course, it wasn't without. There was like a stabbing in the hotel that we were at, so it wasn't without craziness. Um,
and
but
probably not even like a historically accurate bayonet stabbing, right?
it wasn't. No, they just used a regular knife. It was messed up. But after that, I was still hooked though, and just through the years, it was kind of my outlet. I called it battlefield therapy. I was a police officer for 15 years, and you need an outlet, especially when you're working in cases with children and things like that. So I called it battlefield therapy, and I would go out and hike and document what I was seeing, and of course I made my own little thing, Aaron Civil War Travels, and then someone said you should do a YouTube page. Didn't know anything about YouTube. Still don't know a whole lot about YouTube, uh, even though I try. So I started that in 2016. And of course, I called it Aaron Civil War Travels because I like the name, and it was easy for me to remember because I'm Aaron. And I started out just videos here and there. Wasn't like a set time. Uh, but then after I left law enforcement, I worked for the Shenandoah Valley Battlefield Foundation for a little while, for a couple years, and kind of started picking up the YouTube page a little bit more, continuing around different places, and it really took off over the last 2 years. I left the foundation in 2024, started Aaron Civil War Travels LLC. So I added three letters. That was all I did. But it's really it was just a fun thing to do. My wife was very supportive, and she said, you do all this traveling for this stuff, and you like talking about it. Why don't you try to make a business out of it? And so far, it's been going pretty well.
Excellent. And you mentioned your work with the Valley, and that's sort of what got us speaking recently is when I went up to McDowell and you're like, hey, I wrote those signs.
Yeah, I
So
was
tell
talking
me a
about
little
it.
bit about that for a second.
So yeah, when I worked for the foundation, I was privileged to be able to work on that park with Terry Heder, who is now with Civil War Trails, and we collaborated on rewriting the battlefield signs and the trail there to get just to give it a more open view of how McDowell really was fought. Um, and actually, one of the guys we're going to talk about tonight that I'll mention, he was at McDowell, but it was a super fun time doing that. A couple of the signs I got to do, on my own. Hometown Foes was one of them, which I just absolutely loved. The guys from Clarksburg fighting each other, and the quote there is, "The jibs and jabs flew thicker than the bullets," which I could certainly see. But yeah, just being able to do something like that really gets your you really have to delve into a battle, and McDowell looks like it would be an easy battle to understand, and it is not.
No,
Um,
it is not. The topography is woo.
it's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's nuts. So, but
It
it was a
is.
fun project.
So, and we'll talk about where your Civil War trails or travels have taken you into Georgia in a second. But if folks want to follow your travels, how can they tune in and be an adventure partner?
So on YouTube, it's Aaron Civil War Travels. New videos come out every Saturday from all over. This week, I think, is going to be the second Battle of Cabin Creek in Oklahoma. And then I'm working on editing the 54th Massachusetts video for Boston. So all over the place. Can find me there. My website is www.aaroncivilwartravels.com. Of course, the email and everything's on there, contact information, and I'm on Facebook. I'll answer pretty much any messages that come through, either through Facebook or calls or anything.
Very good, very good. Your stuff shows up on my feed on Facebook. It's always kind of neat to see where you're at any given time. So you managed to get around,
I
which is
do.
good
I
for a
do.
guy
Yeah.
who's has travels in the name, right? So.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, one of your favorite places that you've been to, and kind of our reason for getting together to chat tonight, is Pickett's Mill in Georgia. And
Yes,
your travels took you there. And although you're a Valley boy, you fell in love with the red clay of Georgia.
I
So,
do.
first, just give us the quick overview of Pickett's Mill, and then I'm going to have you talk a little bit about why you fell in love with it, and we'll get into some of the details about the battle.
Yeah. So Pickett's Mill, it's fought May 27th, 1864. It's part of the Atlanta campaign, as Joseph Johnston's kind of getting in these different defensive positions to thwart William T. Sherman's thrust toward Atlanta. Uh, that part of Georgia, there are a ton of ridges. So he's got a good many places he can go and set up. When they get down to this point in May 25th, they're going to have the Battle of New Hope Church, and at that point, Sherman seems like he doesn't think the entire Confederate army is in front of him. He still thinks that Johnston's still retreating. Unfortunately for Sherman, that's not true. Johnston is very much there, and he extends his line out to the Pickett's Mill area. And he's got Pat Cleburne out there, probably one of the best division commanders in the whole war. In either army, Sherman, even after the war, says, "I always knew we were going to have a fight when we face Cleburne." Um, so he's got him. He takes him and puts him on the right flank, and Sherman decides he's going to try to outflank the Confederates by going to that right flank. And that's kind of where the problems start for this battle. So much so that Sherman, at the end of this battle, will not even mention it. He won't. It's not in his memoirs. Doesn't write a letter to his wife about it. It's just, yeah, we had some fights at New Hope, and that's it. There's no official report from him or anything. So it just didn't happen in his eyes. But he's going to soon find out when he moves to the right that the terrain is going to play a huge part, and also the Confederates are not. They're going to have something to say about it as well.
Yeah. So, what made you fall in love with Pickett's Mill?
So I decided my last couple of years of law enforcement, I was doing a lot more with cases against children, and so definitely need an outlet when you're doing stuff like that. And I always wanted to do some Atlanta campaign stuff, and my wife said, "Yeah, go ahead." And I actually had to turn around and go interview a guy before I could actually leave. That someone I had been looking for. But then my wife said, "Yeah, go for it." So I left at like 2 o'clock in the morning and just drove straight through. Started, at Ringgold Gap and just went south to Atlanta. But Pickett's Mill was day 2 of the trip, and I hiked every trail there. It's so pristine. There is, there's a few signs, there's the trail, but there's no, you don't have a lot of monuments or anything like that. I don't think there's any monuments actually out on the battlefield. There's one at the visitor center, and the visitor center is just a small little state-run visitor center, but they're great in there. And just walking the ground and seeing the way it went down, because you can still see it even today, how deadly of a battle it was. And then starting to kind of look into it more while I was there, realizing it's not a very long battle. Um, and of course, Sherman not talking about it kind of
Yeah.
sparked my interest. Like, well, why wouldn't you talk about this?
And that dude will talk about anything. So
Yeah,
that's
exactly. Yeah, he's talking about all kinds of stuff. But and then seeing that, and I've always been a fan of Pat Claiborne. As far as his leadership and stuff. So he's one of my favorite Civil War personalities. And then on the other side, there's a gentleman involved, William McLean, who I had a soft spot for because of McDowell and things like that. And so he is there. He does some stuff there. There's a whole issue between him and Oliver O. Howard, who happens to be in command there. And it just, yeah, walking the terrain and seeing what those guys went through on both sides, and it just Ambrose Bierce calls it a criminal blunder. He was there, and it certainly is.
yeah, yeah. Now, and one could say this about any number of battlefields. Like you get there, they're pristine. Oh my gosh, this is really cool. I mean, you've got a lot of those sorts of battlefields out in the Shenandoah Valley.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is it because you were awake for 30 hours and you had reached this metaphysical, like,
It could have been some of that.
oh yeah.
Yeah, there was some of that. When you're tired, things are a lot cooler. I think there was definitely a part of that, and it just every step I took though, it
Yeah,
was just like this is something I want to learn more about. This battle is just for some reason just stuck with me,
yeah.
and yeah, it's my favorite Georgia battle. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of Georgia battles,
Yeah, sure, sure, sure.
but
Well, and to me though, I mean, that's fascinating. It's one of those like little Civil War miracles where I think we all have this place where we have stepped onto the battlefield and it has spoken to us in a way that we were not expecting. And, in the larger sort of context of our experiences and interests, it just seems completely random. And yet, like, this is just clicking for me, you
yeah,
know? Yeah.
yeah.
So I think maybe the Battle of Jackson, Mississippi was probably that for
Oh,
me.
it's
Although there's
beautiful.
not much battlefield left of it, but to me it was just like out of nowhere. This is just like wow, this is fascinating. So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about the battle, and we'll sort of get into the criminal blunder as Ambrose Bierce mentioned it. So we're kind of at this point into the Atlanta campaign, and Johnson has set this pattern of falling back, and he's been falling back, but here he sort of breaks that pattern for the first time, right?
Yeah.
So how much of this is like Sherman sort of thinking like, ah, he's falling back again. Oops.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. The 2 days before when they fight at New Hope Church, he's fighting Hood's Corps, and he ends up, um, basically saying, I don't think they're really here. I think we can still get around them. I think Johnston's farther back, and this is just like a rear guard action. It's a very bloody rear guard action if that's the case, as Joseph Hooker will find out. But um, it turns out, it's not just Hood there. That Johnston is very much wanting to hold this Dallas Ackworth line, because it is a key point and along the Etowah River. And so being able to do that, finding these defensible positions that he's been looking for, he did plan to do an offensive at Resaca earlier in the month,
Hmm.
but things just didn't work out exactly for him there. But being able to find some of these places to set up and have the kind of defense, he's outnumbered. He knows that. So a defensive battle for him is very, very much what he needs to do. And it's interesting as well because it's, here in Virginia, we have the Overland Campaign, the Valley, all this is happening at the same time. And you look at Grant and Lee, and I mean, they're slugging it out. And then you go, and Grant's making flank movements too, but they're still slugging it out. But you look at Sherman and Johnston, there's not that much slugging. They're kind of just moving. It's almost like a dance, and not those big frontal assaults. There will be a few during the campaign, but not near what we have here in Virginia. And so I think when Sherman gets the repulse at New Hope Church, that emboldens Johnston a little bit more to say, hey, he's going to try another flank move. And so he's going to extend his line out to Pickett's Mill uh, in order to stop that flank move.
So, and this is really kind of Johnson learning Sherman and maybe Sherman mislearning Johnson, or he thinks he's learning Johnson, but not quite.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, Joe Johnston did do a lot of retreating on the peninsula and things like that. And I don't I don't knock him as much as some do on that, just simply because I think he's a little more defensive minded, realizing the odds against him. I don't think he takes the risk say Robert E. Lee does. Um, but I still think he's a very good commander in a lot of ways. And this one, the way he does the Atlanta campaign, I think really shows that he was trying.
And my thought about Johnston during Atlanta is he probably finds the right time to be defensive minded, considering the resource limitations and the need
Yes.
to buy time because of the election. Um, and whereas that didn't serve him very well on the peninsula, where everybody in the Confederacy is still thinking, fight, fight, fight.
Yeah. There's still that.
It's like,
Yeah.
kind of delaying things here is working to his advantage. Um, and my perceptions of Johnson are always colored by, Jackson, Mississippi. I should probably mention that too. But
I understand that.
total low point of his career there.
Yes.
But here, Johnson always seems to be looking for an opportunity, but unless the right opportunity shows, he's buying time. Here he sees that opportunity that he always professes to look for.
Yeah. And he's not necessarily going to go on the offensive with it, but yeah, this good defensive opportunity makes Sherman try to flank me and smash into my army and beat up his army. Like, yeah,
Mhm.
I've got the federal troops were getting tired by this point of always finding the Confederates behind breastworks of some sort,
Yeah.
which has happened the whole month of May for them. So it's just going to be another issue here at Pickett's Mill for them.
Now, just for folks who are kind of only vaguely familiar with these actions, New Hope Church, Pickett's Mill. I mean, we've got the hellhole that's all thrown in. Like, kind of sketch this out real briefly and how this one little interaction in New Hope Church turns into kind of a much bigger deal than I think either side was looking for.
Yeah, so again, Sherman is marching, trying to outmaneuver Johnston while Johnston's trying to defend. And when Johnston puts John Bell Hood at New Hope Church, I think his plan is to stay on that line as long as he can because it's a good defensible area. He's just come out of Allatoona Pass, which Sherman said, "I'm not attacking there." Sherman had been through that area years before, knew what the terrain was, knew that was not a place to have an attack, and he maneuvers Johnston out of it. And this is another blocking action as Johnston's going to move down. But when they Dallas, Georgia, is a big issue for the Confederates, holding that Dallas Ackworth Etowah River line. It's another obstacle for Sherman. And so being able to set on that line and have this defensive area, that particular area has a lot of ridges and ravines, a little bit more than some of the other areas. Allatoona Pass obviously is,
Yeah.
for those that haven't been there, that's an eye opener. Uh, but aside from that, some of these other places have been a little harder to maybe defend. They've been temporary defenses, where this one he's really securing the right. Sherman's been moving to the right a lot, and so um, getting back to this line is detrimental or is important for Johnston in order to be able to defend the way he needs to
hmm
and keep Atlanta from Union hands.
And how do you assess the Army commanders? I almost said Corps commanders here, but Sherman's working with an Army group. How do you assess the Army commanders here? Working under Sherman. So as Hooker first kind of stumbles in to New Hope
Yeah,
Church, and it's Howard's down at Pickett's Mill, and how are they handling all that?
they're I don't think they're handling it very well, honestly. Hooker, aside from Chancellorsville and the stuff that happens there with him, even then it's not. He did better than what some give him credit for. I think there's all that's a whole nother thing. But here as a division commander, a corps commander, he is he's on top of his game.
Mhm.
And when he slams into Hood, I mean he doesn't wait. He's going to hit him as hard as he can, and I think he convinces himself as well that um, the Confederates are there in force, but Sherman doesn't exactly believe him.
Mhm.
And with Oliver O. Howard, also known as O. Howard, I like Oliver O. Howard, to be honest with you. He's just in the wrong place at the wrong time a lot.
I'm going to quote you on that one. I
Yeah,
like Oliver.
I do. I like it. He is something. He he's got he's got kind of that black cloud following him,
Yeah.
and understandably so. But I think he is struggling to understand what Sherman wants because he's going through George Thomas,
Right.
and you have George Thomas is probably the main commander that they will talk to here. Um, Sherman will talk to Thomas, then Thomas relays stuff to Howard, and it just I don't feel like they understand the terrain as well as they should have.
Right.
The march, they're only going to march about 2 miles, and it takes about 5 hours to get
Wow.
where they should be. And um, one of the things that Howard says when he gets there, he's looking for the right flank of the Confederates at Pickett's Mill. And when he gets there, he sends a message back to Thomas says, I found the right flank of the enemy, I think. He's not sure.
Yeah.
And so they're not confident in what they're doing. And I think then you get down under that, you've got your brigade commanders, um, especially Hazen, who poor guy, he's going to get sent into the slaughter, and but he's a good commander, and he's not going to bulk at it. He's
Yeah.
going to do it. But you could tell he wasn't very happy. One of his men says they saw him, and he didn't look happy at all because
Yeah.
of what was happening. But when Howard gets there, he's unsure of what to do. It seems like he hesitates a lot.
Yeah. How much also, I mean, you're talking about the communications thing a second ago. How much of a factor is Howard's pretty poisonous relationship with Hooker, um, which is all left over from Chancellorsville?
Yeah, so and Nathaniel McLean, who is supposed to assist Howard during this battle, is also having that sour mood with Howard. He's in a different corps now, but the Chancellorsville cloud is certainly hanging over these guys. Howard blames McLean. He names him as one of the people that uh, were at fault for Chancellorsville. And of course, Hooker gets that embarrassment as the flank gets rolled up. So yeah, the relationship there is not great. McLean in particular will do what he's told, but nothing more. Um, and I really do like Nathaniel McLean. He's a very good commander, but he's supposed to support Howard's attack, and he supports it to an extent. He just
Mhm.
doesn't go any farther than he needs to. He's not doing Howard any favors. Um, and so that, and I think with Hooker too, at least during this, they're kind of apart,
Right.
and Howard is operating mostly through Thomas, so he's not really having too many interactions with Hooker. But I can imagine it probably wasn't very pleasant.
Yeah. And my kind of impression of this too is, Hooker runs into Hood, and then Howard runs into more of Johnston's army, And it's like, should you be helping me out? Should I be? I don't know what I'm looking
Yeah.
at. And so they're kind of playing it maybe overly safe because neither of them really wants to stick their neck out for the other one, but also they're just not sure what the situation on the ground is.
Yeah, and they're getting from Sherman again that he doesn't think the whole Confederate Army is there,
Yeah.
and so that's playing a huge factor in that with the flanking movement. That's why he makes the movement toward Pickett's Mill. Sherman not being convinced that the Confederate Army is in front of him, it gives his corps commanders a little bit of pause.
Yeah. Yeah. So open the action for me at Pickett's Mill. Johnson gets his guys into position.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how much time do they have to fortify or at all? And what are they waiting for?
So they will actually have a good little bit of time during the day to fortify. They've been kind of improving the position since May 25th. The 26th, there's a lot of skirmishing, but Johnston's extending. And again, Sherman's looking for that. Can I get around to the right? And that morning, there will be just this huge cannonade. Uh, and the point of that is Sherman is replacing certain units in the line so that Howard can make this flanking movement. He's going to remove Thomas J. Wood's division, Richard Johnson's division out of line and replace them with others, which I believe the other division commander there is, or I'm sorry, other corps commander is Palmer, and he gets very upset about it because those guys are from his it might be his division, but they're from his units, and so he actually wants to resign, and George Thomas talks him out of it. But they're trying to do that and just kind of keep the Confederates in that one spot there with this big cannonade. It's kind of a feint. This is where we're going to hit, um, and they're going to march out. Is it about 2 miles? Really, is all they really needed to go to get to the right flank. But the the forest there is so thick. When I went recently, just the other day, uh, the first time I'd been there, it was a little more open because it was a November date, and so it's a little more open then.
Yeah.
Uh, the other day, it was super thick, and you know, a lot of these commanders will make fields of fire. Claiborne will not do that, and so that's going to play a factor as well because they just don't know where they're going. They're just kind of it's like filling out in the darkness uh, for something that you're not sure. You know it's there, but you're not sure where.
Right.
And there will be some. The cavalry, the Confederate cavalry, does a great job of keeping Johnston and Claiborne kind of up to date of what's going on. The Union forces, when they move out, they're not supposed to be doing any bugle calls or anything, but there are several orders through the bugles and things like that. So the Confederates are very aware of where they're going.
Yeah.
It's not as secretive as was hoped for the Union Army.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think though. So Claiborne doesn't make these fields of fire. What advantage does he see for himself by leaving the foliage up?
So it's a couple things. Where he places his line, he has a deep ravine in front of him, and he can also see the other hill. He's got great breastworks up, a very strong position. To his right is Joe Wheeler's cavalry, which is kind of up and down throughout the war, but at this battle, they really put up a fight. Um, so he's got some good units close to him, uh, and he really he's got so much forethought. It's like he's thinking if these guys are going to come at me, they've got to go through this ravine. Well, if I don't clear these fields of fire, there's no way I'm going to get like long range artillery in here anyway. They're going to have to come after me, and they're going to have to go through that, then this ravine just to get to my lines. And then he's also going to place a couple 1847 howitzers on one side of the line under Thomas Keyes, filled with canister,
Mhm.
to shoot down the ravine. And then he will also have a road cut to his farther right. There's a cornfield that's a little bit farther down, and the cavalry's in that area, but he'll have a road cut out through there in order to move units if need be. It's not expected that the Union will go there. The terrain actually dictates that, but he's got that forethought to, I'm going to make this road in case I've got to rush somebody down here. And he's got units in reserve. So he's set and ready to go. And I think just keeping the obstacle of the foliage just is a huge benefit.
So when the Federals do then finally advance, what are they expecting? Why are they moving forward? What happens to them?
So again, Sherman is still saying that the whole army's not there. And Howard's goal is to find that right flank of the Confederacy, of the Confederate Army, flank them out of this strong position, and keep moving toward Atlanta, much like they've been doing this whole time. Uh, the repulse at New Hope Church makes Sherman want to go on the flanks. And he chooses the Confederate right, his left, because he's been doing that quite a bit, and that seems to be somewhat the weaker flank, I guess. And with his familiarity of that part of Georgia, I think he's thinking like it's not going to be that hard to get around
Hmm.
over there. And that particular part, he'd been through Altoona Pass, but I think that particular part maybe not so much. He didn't realize the terrain. And you've got these guys that they're marching out again. To them, it's completely dark at this point because they have no clue where they're going. Um, they kind of get lost a little bit, and so it's just a filling out. But when they finally get there, they can see the Confederates on the ridge and see the defensive position. They'll be very aware that the cavalry is to the right. Uh, but again, he becomes hesitant because he's still not sure. He can't really see where the line ends.
Hmm.
And of course, Claiborne has extended it some, and he's got other units that'll be coming down there. So the point of that attack is to get is to roll over the flank and push them out of that position. Uh, but if you don't know where the flank is, it's kind of hard to do that.
Of
Uh,
course, Howard having some experience with flank attacks,
yeah, yeah.
right?
And I would go back to him saying, I found it, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It just, I don't know how that would have read.
So, and in those situations, of course, then you just sort of have to send some skirmishers forward and develop the situation and develop the position. How much of a challenge does Howard find here, and why does this then suddenly erupt into something he's not expecting and ready for?
So he's definitely been skirmishing with the cavalry already. Again, Joe Wheeler's men, they're holding a ridge on the right. They're able to kind of thwart some of the movement. Uh, and when Howard's there, his hesitancy, instead of sending all of Thomas Wood's division in or Richard Johnston's division, um, he's just going to send a part. He will actually send um, Hazen's brigade in first,
Hmm.
and it reminds me of kind of like at Fredericksburg where it's the brigade attacks instead of
Yeah.
the full full power there, and that's what he's going to do. He's going to send Hazen first, and then you'll have William H. Gibson come in. But these guys aren't going in all at the same time. It's around 14,000 men total
Yeah.
there.
Which is not a small attack,
No, it's a
you know.
large one. Yeah, it's a large flanking movement, and but Howard decides the main assault will be by Gibson's men or Hazen's men, and again Hazen doesn't really
Right.
he's not happy, but he does what he's told, and he fights really hard. But when he starts advancing, the terrain starts to really play an important role because as his men are advancing, they will actually split,
Yeah.
and you'll have a couple brigade or a couple units that'll go off to the left toward that Confederate right where the cavalry is, and the rest will go straight kind of into that ravine. And the guys don't exactly know that just because it's so disgusting in there as far
Yeah.
as the underbrush and things. I mean, it's a beautiful area, but to have to make an attack through there is terrible. And the next units that come are going to do the exact same thing. So Claiborne's got it set up really well. because he doesn't have to do a whole lot. He doesn't have to march through all that. He
Right.
can move his units where he needs to, and he's got other support coming from Hood. Although those guys don't actually participate, um, he's got plenty of support coming. So he's in a very good way. And with Howard not being 100% sure of where things are, sending that one unit in. Um, and I'll go back to that 2 mile hike. It takes 5 hours, and then they've got
Right.
to deploy. So they're not making an attack really until about 4:30. Between 3 and 4:30 is when the attacks will start. Um, and it does not go well. Hazen will be his men will fight hard, but they will be beaten back. And by about the 45-minute mark, between 4:45 and 5:15, they're pretty much have been pushed back by Granbury's Texans. Again, you still have the cavalry on the right, who have been pushed off the ridge, but they make a couple charges um, up the ridge to kind of stop this thrust as well. And then Howard says, "Well, let's see what It looks like Hazen had maybe some success. Let's see if we can follow up with that." And rather than send the rest of the division, he's going to send another brigade. And he's going to send
Right.
Gibson, and Gibson's going to basically suffer the same fate. Uh, the men will split as they're going down, and of course, Claiborne, knowing that they're kind of going to that right side now toward this cornfield, he's going to be able to dispatch units, mainly Lowry, and I believe he's going to send some of Govin's men down through there as well, to bolster that right flank where the cavalry is. And it just by that time, they really only fight. The battle technically goes till midnight. They
Mm.
really only fight about 2 hours.
Okay.
And even during that time, Howard even talks about, we've talked about him being at Chancellorsville. He's been at Gettysburg. He's been on the peninsula. He lost an arm. And he talks about how this fighting was some of the most intense of the war,
Hmm.
um, which I think just says a ton. Uh,
Right. Right.
you
Yeah.
know, and those guys, as they're coming through that woods, just imagining as they come in, and then now they've got to go down this deep ravine. And when they get there, they've got canister fire coming from these. They might be older guns, but they're still doing a lot of work. And then they're getting shot at. A lot of these guys will just end up laying down and
Yeah.
just holding for cover. Um, there will be one point when the right flank looks like it's starting to, the cavalry's getting pushed. Of course, Lowry's men will show up. Um, One of the Union troops will say, "Now we've caught you without your damn logs," because they haven't had time to really set up, but it doesn't last long. And there's some pretty neat charges that happen between the two units with Gibson once Gibson comes online. But again, Nathaniel McLean is up on Howard's right, and he will move out toward Claiborne a little bit, but he just moves out a little bit and then he stops. He's going no further. He's just basically holding Howard's right flank.
Hmm.
He'll take a couple casualties from artillery fire and stuff, but he's not really going to participate much in the battle. Uh, the farthest he gets is he doesn't even get to the fields. He just comes to like a wood line edge, and that's it. Um, and this is a guy that the reason I like him so much is that McDowell, he's the first on the field with his unit, and when he
Hmm.
march at the end, he marches down and about faces to look at the Confederates with no ammunition. So he's not a coward,
Right.
but I think that has to do with the relationship between him and Howard. He's like, okay, I'm going to do exactly what my orders say.
Yeah.
But then
Let,
these guys, oh, go ahead.
just let me ask you, what sort of shape are Claiborne's guys in? Like, if Howard had exerted more force simultaneously, are Claiborne's men in a condition to repulse that? Are they in a geographic spot to be able to repulse that?
Yeah, definitely. They're in a very good spot. Um, the biggest problem is he has to extend that right flank a little bit more. But they're set up with the artillery in the right spots. They've got that ravine. the foliage. Again, he's already cut a little path down to his farther right just in case. So his men are they're very confident. Claiborne's guys are always seem to be pretty confident, but he's also got men from Hood that he knows are available as well. So he he's got quite a few guys. The Confederates they have roughly about 10,000 men total. So they're still outnumbered, but that's kind of a norm. But the guys that he has fighting under him too, he's got Leonidas Polk's nephew, Lucius Polk. He's got the cavalry under Wheeler and John Kelly. He's got Hiram Granberry and Daniel Govin's men. It's just, and he's got Keyes artillery there, and so he's got a very good set of guys with really good morale. And yeah, they had to march to get there, and they've been building these earthworks, but I don't think they're exerting near as much as Howard's men are. And
Yeah.
I think even if Howard had attacked fully, he may have had a little bit of success on the Confederate right, farther right, if that terrain continues to funnel those guys down. But
Yeah. So this lasts a couple hours. Why does the fighting finally peter out?
pretty much darkness.
Yeah.
It gets late, and there's also an order will come from Thomas to stop the attack. Now at that point, Scribner, who is one of the Union men, trying to remember his first name now. He's
It
in.
will it will come to you at 2
Yeah,
a.m.
yeah. I'll send you a message at 2 and be like, here it is. But Scribner is with the Federal Army. He will actually move out, and he'll move out farther toward that Confederate right, where the cavalry set up. Still, they've retaken that ridge, but they won't move any farther because they're basically there to cover the retreat of Hazen and Gibson at this point. Hazen and Gibson have to get their men back. There's now a defensive line set up for the Federals on the other side. And so these guys are kind of looking at each other. But the Confederates definitely hold the field at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So orders coming through like, hey, this attack is not working. And so much so that the next day Sherman goes to the other flank and is successful there. But here he just does not, he just can't get it.
So as action shifts away from Pickett's Mill, what are things like in the footsteps on the battlefield with the casualties? Kind of keep me on the
Yeah,
battlefield for a second after the action shifts.
so after the main action is over, there's still some fighting. There's still some artillery fire. A lot of wounded. Howard even gets wounded. The heel of his boot gets shot off, and he exclaims, "I'm too afraid to look down." He's already lost an arm and suffered a lot, but he just has a very deep bruise. Can't really walk, but his leg is still there, so he's good. His foot's still there, but the Union troops at this point, I mean, some of them, there's a certain place, Brad Bukovich in his book on Pickett's Mill it's called Across the Deadline, and it's just this little space, much like a deadline at a prison camp. But if you cross that, you're done. And that's exactly what these guys are going to have. There's going to be that no man's land between them, but it's not very much. The Union troops are actually laying kind of in that ravine and under the Confederate line. They can hear them talking. Of course, the Confederates can hear them. And at that point, as it's getting night, the Confederates have really pushed them back. They're actually going to make a night attack. So we get one of those rare night attacks. Granberry will go to Claiborne and be like, we could sweep them out of here and just push them back so that they might attack us in the morning. At first, Claiborne's like, no, and then he finally says, okay, and it's a good bit of the line that will end up making this night attack, where you'll have even the cavalry getting involved. They'll run down in there. You've got Lowry's men and Granberry's men coming in, and they're pushing these men out of this ravine and back up Of course, they're capturing a ton of guys, uh, and they kind of push up to that other ridge to hold that, and it gets the Union troops out. But there's even an account of one of the, I believe it's a Texas soldier. He talks about this charge, and it's pitch black. And he says one of his friends ran off a cliff, and just that's how he dies during the battle. He's not shot or anything; he just broke his neck. So it's definitely a an eye opener for the Union. But there's the next day or that morning as light starts coming, these guys really start seeing the carnage there, and some of the soldiers, guy he's on picket duty, like in the ravine. He's a Texan as well, and he talks about everybody was headshot. That
Mm.
most of these guys, their brains are hanging out and stuff, and it's a pretty gruesome description. But he says, it was one of the worst things he'd ever seen.
Yeah.
He had seen so many things, but this was one of those that made him sick, like
Mm.
physically sick. And
Yeah.
you're talking 1864, and these guys have been in some pretty heavy conflict.
Yeah.
I think that speaks to what the just the sheer destruction of a couple hours battle. Had it been a bigger battle, what
Yeah.
what would have been?
And I suppose just hearing your description of the battlefield and the type of combat and guys hitting the ground, the number of headshots doesn't surprise me,
Yeah,
considering what the lay of the land was and how advancing Federals reacted to that topography.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know they're just clinging to the ground as much as they can, and it's almost like shooting fish in a barrel
Yeah.
at times. So
So
yeah,
what does the Battle of Pickett's Mill mean in the context of the larger campaign?
it's more of a delay. It's really a delay of Sherman. Um, the next day, I mean, he will be successful at the Battle of Dallas, pushing the left flank in, but it's a frustrating delay, and it also lets him know that Joe Johnston's whole army is in front of him. It's not just one unit or corps. He's got everybody there, and he's got to figure out a different way to approach it. And of course, luckily for him, the next day he's successful. Uh, but he's already hit this a couple days. He hit New Hope Church just a couple miles down the road. He's going to hit at Pickett's Mill. He's been repulsed bloodily
Mhm.
those 2 days. So it definitely delays his march on Atlanta, and it shows that the Confederates they're not just going to retreat the whole time and not really put up a fight,
Yeah.
and that there's opportunity.
Do you think that Johnston effectively executes his defense along the river line?
For the first few days, yeah.
Okay.
I think he could have strengthened his left flank more.
Okay.
Um, it just doesn't work out. I think he tries to make an attack there. They actually make an attack there, and it gets repulsed. So he does try to do some offensive action there as well. Um, but I think he doesn't have in that at that point he just doesn't have the units to be able to do that kind of offensive
Yeah.
tactic, in an area that could have worked maybe with a little bit bigger units or
Yeah.
something. Or if it was flipped, Sherman and Johnston attacking it could have been maybe successful. But
Yeah. How do you assess Sherman and his performance during this phase of the campaign?
so during this phase, I don't assess him very well
Okay.
at this point. Now, prior to this, I mean, he's doing what he doesn't want to do, frontal assaults. Uh,
Mhm.
I think it would have been either just as bloody as the Overland campaign, or maybe even bloodier, because these guys are attacking across mountains,
Yeah. Right.
big ridges, um, and so in very wooded areas, like it's like the wilderness times 50. So I think he executes up to that point very well, but I think he gets a little complacent, because the
Yeah.
Confederates have been moving back and he has beaten them. And aside from Resaca, he's really hasn't had as much resistance as he could have.
Mhm.
Um, and I think he gets a little complacent with that. So when these two battles happen with New Hope and Pickett's Mill, it's probably an eye opener for him.
Hmm.
I will give him credit; he doesn't seem to panic much compared to earlier in the war when they think he's crazy. But he's not necessarily like it's more he's got that Grant-esque type of thing. We're going to keep going.
Yeah.
Or you could even say like similar to Stonewall Jackson, we're going to keep plowing through. We might make a mistake, we keep going.
Let the record show we are 50 minutes into this conversation, and I am
And
not the one who brought up Stonewall
no,
Jackson.
no,
Just
the Valley guy did. I can't help it. So, but yeah, I did that for you.
I appreciate it. I feel the love. I do. I feel the
Yeah,
love. So, because it seems to me, one of the criticisms of Sherman in the Atlanta campaign, particularly in the early parts of it, is that he's afraid to fight, and he's doing all
yeah,
these flanking maneuvers, which are successful in flushing Johnston out. And, why fight if you can score those bloodless victories and still gain territory?
yeah,
But it seems to me that these three battles, New Hope Church, Pickett's Mill, and Dallas, show that Sherman's perfectly willing to fight, if the
yeah,
circumstance dictates it.
yeah. And I think that's where he and Johnston are very similar. It's about what the circumstances dictating. Because Johnson, he's kind of got the same. He's not willing to fight. Here we go.
Yeah.
And a battle like Pickett's Mill, I think, really sends it home for Sherman because of the bloodshed that happens in just those few hours, and some of the descriptions these guys are given. I think that's why he doesn't continue to try on that Confederate right. I'm going to go a different way,
Yeah.
but definitely this shows that he's very willing to have bloodshed if need be.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I think the flanking movements are a great idea because they work. But
Yeah, yeah, that's right. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
I mean, yeah,
But there again, maybe that does lead to that complacency that you mentioned, and Johnson's able to exploit that tendency.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, do you have a favorite primary source that is about Pickett's Mill?
So there's not as many as you would hope, especially when it comes to the cavalry. I'm actually working on a project that involves the Confederate cavalry because they get pretty much completely overlooked,
Yeah.
and not necessarily purposely. It's a very large infantry battle as well, but they do some really good work on their side, a little bit longer than the infantry, and they in the end will have to be backed up by the infantry. And those guys are they've been kind of at each other during that time anyway. But
Yeah.
some of the Ambrose Bierce gives a great description of things. Um, you've got some Major John Kennard of the 10th Texas does a really good job. He actually in the mid. I always like finding the funny things in the midst of a battle. Um, at this point during the battle, he's actually taunting the Federals, and he says he's saying things to his men for encouragement, and he says, put our trust in God, men, for He is with us. And then that's when he starts to turn and taunt, yelling at the Union. He says, "Come on, we are demoralized." And about that moment that he says that, a bullet will actually strike him in the head. But it was just a glancing blow. And when the major gets back on his feet, he just says, "Boys, I told him a lie. And I believe that's the reason I got shot." And so, that's in the midst of this craziness. And I'll go with another Jackson thing because I always find this one funny. When he's getting chased in Port Republic on June 8th, he stops to tell, Hunter McGuire and the wagon, can you not cuss at them? Basically, you're getting chased. Like, what are you doing? So there's always here in Newmarket, the Field of Lost Shoes. One of the kids, Samuel Adams, talks about he stops in the midst of the battle to get his shoe.
Yeah.
It's just those things. Human nature comes out.
Yeah.
But yeah, resources there. There's Wheeler. Joe Wheeler does an okay report about the battle. He's not too bad, but really, I would say Hazen's.
Yeah.
What Hazen says his battle report is probably the best one.
Yeah, and just a
Um,
solid dude, so
yeah,
he's
yeah,
dependable witness.
and even Howard doesn't say a whole lot about the battle.
Yeah.
Ambrose Bierce says he only gave like 2 sentences. It's like a paragraph, but
Yeah.
it's still
What?
not a lot.
Speaking of Bierce, why is it he calls it a criminal blunder?
He doesn't believe the attack should have ever been made.
Okay.
Um, it's just it was just criminal to send those men across into the face of this very formidable defense.
Okay.
It just does not make sense to him um, to do it. And of course, he's witnessing it, and uh, he says, this is when he talks about the deadline, but he's men got no farther than the predecessors, before them. It's just he sees what's happening, and also sees the fact that it's unit by unit, it's brigade by brigade, not a full division. They're not sending as many men as they could of it. And actually, I found what I was looking for. Um, this is what he says: there's a class of events which, by their nature and despite any intrinsic interest that they may possess, are foredoomed to oblivion. There's also a book about that has that title. They're merged in the general story of those greater events which they were a part of, and he's starting to talk about Pickett's Mill here, and he says, you know, to how many having knowledge of the battles of our Civil War does the name Pickett's Mill suggest acts of heroism and devotion performed in scenes of awful carnage to accomplish the impossible? And he's just seeing this, and he's like, this is not. And of course, here's where he really gets with Sherman. He said, buried in the official reports of the victors, there are indeed imperfect accounts of the engagement. The vanquished have not thought it expedient to relate it. It's ignored by General Sherman in his memoirs, yet Sherman ordered it. General Howard wrote an account of the campaign, of which was an incident, and dismissed it in a single sentence. Yet Howard planned it, and it was fought as an isolated, independent action under his eye. Whether it was so trifling an affair as to justify this inattention, let the reader judge. So I think on top of all that, the fact that these guys are ignoring the sacrifice is what's criminal.
Yeah, and I could certainly see how that would get under the skin of the infantrymen who are having to make these sorts of assaults. So, Aaron, as we head into the home stretch here, anything I haven't asked you about Pickett's Mill that I should have, or something you want to add?
Like I said, I'm working on a project for Pickett's Mill. I was down there this past week, just gathering some more resources for the cavalry fight. Uh, I think we've got some great books out there, and I'm hoping that once I get this written, this can be a companion to Brad Bukovich's book in a way. He does. Brad did a great job, and I know he. You could just tell by reading the book how in depth he went. Um, but there's also just not a lot about the cavalry out there, and it's more things seem to have been popping up here lately, and which happens we start finding stuff like, well, wait a minute. Um, and I always it reminds me I'm going to do a Gettysburg one now. The movie Gettysburg at that, when Chamberlain comes up to Hancock and he says, sounds like you were more involved than anything, and Chamberlain says, Jeff Daniels says we were involved. That's how I feel like the cavalry is
Yeah,
with this. Is they're coming up going, hey, we were involved. Like
yeah.
we took a lot. They take quite a few casualties, um, holding that right flank. So
It's Joe Wheeler, and his
yeah,
biggest crime is that he's not Nathan Bedford Forrest, right?
that's yeah. The Southern papers hated him, and some of it was deserved. There was some things, but yeah, he wasn't for us, so he gets a bad rap.
Well, Aaron, I appreciate the chance to chat with you today a little bit about your favorite battlefield.
Yeah,
So.
thank you. I appreciate it too. It was a lot of fun.
Don't forget to follow Aaron's Civil War travels on his YouTube page and on his Facebook page. It is Aaron's Civil War Travels.
It is.
So you can get all the details, and hopefully you'll keep us up to date there about your cavalry project as well.
Yes, yes. I should mention, I forgot this, Chris. I'm sorry. The cannon in my background is the actual cannon that was on the battlefield.
Okay, I
The
figured that was
two.
just your living room, and you liked it so much you recreated
That
the
was
visitor
so
center.
that's the tube from the 18 one of Key's guns.
Okay.
It's now at the Atlanta History Museum, but this was at the time I took this picture. It was on the Pickett's Mill battlefield, mere yards from where it was. So
Wow, that's
yeah,
incredible. So,
yeah, it was cool.
well, thanks for being with us today, Aaron.
Yes, sir.
So
Thank you.
I'm Chris Mackowski for the Emerging Civil War podcast. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you online and on the battlefield.